Are you pro-democracy? Because according to everybody that I speak to, or if you tune into the local news channel or the national news channel, then America is the land of democracy. In fact, we go around the world spreading democracy. That's our mission. We go around the world spreading democracy. And if you ask any half-intelligent, normal citizen in the United States, then they'll tell you that their government is a democracy and everything is run thusly. And sadly, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you do not live, if you're American, you do not live in a democracy, nor would you like to have one. You live in a constitutional republic. In a constitutional republic, the rights of the individual, that's you personally, are protected and supported, regardless of whether they're popular. A democracy is the majority. A democracy is mob rule. Strangely, though, they don't want you to know this, and or you've forgotten this if you were ever taught this in the first place. You live in a constitutional republic. The Constitution was written to bolster and support your God-given rights to be free as an individual. And most of the nonsense that the Democrats, in the democratic way, are trying to claim through democracy they're protecting, say, for example, gay rights, say, for example, any minority group that they protect, say, for example, transgenders, and you name some fringe minority, that could never fly in a democracy unless the democracy or the majority agreed to it. Well, that certainly isn't happening here in the United States. These are fringe groups. They're very small. However, they are protected. They have their right, and I will support that and die defending it, because each and every one of these nitwits has the right to spout off whatever nonsense that they might think. If they're going to be a purple pony tomorrow, they want to be an orange giraffe next week, and I don't care what they want to be. They have the right to be that, or at least think that they are. The strange thing that they don't understand about freedom is it goes both ways. So I have the same right to not accept them or not kowtow to them as a purple pony or as a yellow giraffe or whatever the heck they want to be, a jackass. They can call themselves a jackass all day long. I do not have to treat them as a jackass. I certainly don't have to believe that they're a jackass, because the funny thing about freedom is I have the same rights that they do. So they can go around town saying what they want to, as long as it does not hurt me or my family, my friends, my neighborhood. And as long, I mean physically, because words do not hurt. I mean, I don't know if you're new to this country or new to this planet, but, I was raised with a steady diet of sticks and stones will break your bones, but names can never hurt you. So as an adult, as someone that's heard that 1,000,000 times in their life at least, it's kind of obvious that if you have hurt feelings because other people aren't buying your BS, that's on you. That's not on the person that isn't buying your BS. And if you're not saying anything that's popular or norm or whatever, you know that going in. And it's not your job, or nor do you have the power, nor the right, nor should you ever try to enforce your rules, your ideals, and your immorality or morality onto someone else. Because as much as I may not agree with a lot of the things that are going on in this country, I also do not support the fact that we bring in any laws to force them into morality, because morality cannot be dictated. In other words, I respect their freedom the way they should be respecting ours. And I'm talking, when I say they, about the left. Because if you haven't paid attention, the left has taken over our education system. They are literally our nannies for our children. And if you're wondering where your kids went, they went right into the pockets of the left. And so now, they're just basically, I don't know, being recruited by the card-carrying communists of America. Because in all reality, our poor little dove children that we have forgotten about, we raised their entire lives to be adults and to have at least a little bit of a thick skin and stand on their own merits and to take some responsibility for themselves. And we sent them to college, and they told them, no, you don't have to do any of that. We sent them to college, and we never questioned the fact that they have to worry about their feelings, and they need safe spaces, and they need teddy bears, and they need someone to read childhood stories to them. Now, they haven't heard childhood stories in 15 years. This is the type of stuff that they do in first grade. And strangely, most American adults, they're not even questioning this, or are not aware of it, which is even creepier. But we've raised our children to tweenhood and then adulthood, and sent them to school, sent them to college, where everybody knows what goes on in college. We all think of our kids in college as quasi-adults anyways. That's why we look the other way when they're drinking exorbitant amounts of alcohol, using drugs, and all the while the law enforcement and everybody else, including the school, is looking the other way. So we've at least assumed that they have some semblance of maturity, and that we put into them our best work and think that they can handle what they are now facing. But somehow what you all missed is they took our kids back 15 years. And if our kids' feelings aren't coddled, and they're not rubbed on their backs and given binkies and bottles and cookies and told stories and given teddy bears and puppies, and if you think that I'm kidding, I'm not. On most major universities today, and you better look this up if you don't know, on most major universities and colleges today, they have guidance counselors standing by with special safe spaces and all kinds of nonsense to treat them like they're 5 or 6 years old. And by the way, all you got to do is raise your hand and say that. Maybe even that you don't have to do that, because that might trigger you, because they have this word called triggered. So if you get triggered, by the way, anything can trigger you, absolutely anything. That's the beauty of this. You don't have to take the test. You don't have to hand in your homework. You don't have to have responsibility for anything. You certainly don't have to listen to anyone else's idea that maybe threatens your worldview or maybe hurts your feelings, because if you've gone through your whole life thinking that you're fat and upset that you're fat, and maybe you were bullied at one point, but the rest has gone on in your mind, then anybody that questions your weight or what you're wearing or anything that you kind of construe as someone judging you about your weight or judging you about your sexuality, or you can pick any subject you'd like, any insecurity that someone might carry throughout their life, then you have hit the right prong to activate all these systems and services where you don't have to be responsible for anything. You don't have to go to class, you don't have to take a test, you don't have to get a grade, they'll just give it to you. I mean, folks, I don't think most of you are aware of how bad this is, but this is what they're doing to our children. And all the while, let's go back and remember that if our children are insecure about whatever they're insecure about, whether it's their sexuality, whether it's their weight, whether it's their worldview, whether it's their politics, whether it's anything, any insecurity, you name one, it's their insecurity. And we should be giving them help to deal with their personal insecurity. Not beating everybody in the world around them over the head with a baseball bat and getting everybody else to join their delusion. Because one thing I know for certain is, if that goes through, if this model continues, and if they get their way, then our children are mush. They're worthless human beings. But again, that is the plan, to destroy our own children. However, how does it help our children to validate their mental illness? I have a news flash for all of you. There's nobody on this planet, I don't care how successful, how wonderful, how handsome, how beautiful, how whatever, there's nobody on this planet, not one person, that can honestly say that their life has been perfect. Because it isn't. And everything is relative. So we have people that they have these weird tics and obsessive compulsive disorders, and you name, you could just go down the long laundry list of problems, and everybody has a reason, and it doesn't matter whether or not their parents were the best parents in the world or the absolute worst. It doesn't matter whether they were raped every day or whether they were spoiled. You have sometimes even similar problems that manifest in our children or in adults, and it's all caused by either side, good or bad, whether it's abuse or whether it's being spoiled. And in my opinion, that's abuse. But in all reality, to the child, it doesn't seem that way. They would think that this is wonderful. However, you look at these same kids, they have the same tics, they have the same problems. Here's the point. None of them, whether you're on either side, or most of them, and it's not condoned anymore, have responsibility. And that's the point. The system doesn't want them to have responsibility. The system wants to have all responsibility. It's called communism. And so the system that we live under wants to take all the responsibility away from our children, whether they've had a good upbringing or a bad upbringing. And guess what the easiest course of action for any kid growing up that's a little bit insecure and trying to figure out their way in the world is? Well, of course that sounds convenient, isn't it? I mean, doesn't that sound great? Let someone else handle it for you. Oh, of course they don't understand it's the state, because they just look at it as, oh no, this is just my professor. Or this is just my teacher. Or this is just my coach. But these are people who represent authority to them, which is, by the way, the state. Because at the end of the day, when you follow the money all the way to the end, it comes back to the government. So I think what we need to understand here is, all they're doing is invoking our need to fit in. They're using it against us. They've weaponized our need to fit in. You were taught this when you first went through kindergarten. And if you did something wrong, you were put in the back of the class, in the corner of the room, and a hat was put on you. You were persona non grata. And my goodness, there's nobody in your class that would want to even know you after that point. Certainly they wouldn't want to look at you, because at that point, you are against the state. And this is what we're taught right from the beginning. So you're isolated, and you're removed from the tribe. This is a latent fear that goes back in mankind since the caveman. And now it's been weaponized and used against us. And you need to realize that. Most people, this whole trendy movement, you have to be trendy or follow the trends or dunk your head in buckets of ice water or whatever new nonsense they come up with. There's something wrong with you if you don't follow the trend. There's something wrong with you if you don't follow the herd. If you stand on your own, by your own ideals, good, bad, or indifferent, they're, of course, all bad. Why? Because they're not the tribe's method. They're not the tribe's direction. You have to follow the tribe. You have to follow the herd. And if you don't, there's definitely something wrong with you. So we fast forward now to our children now and gender studies and all this ridiculous nonsense in these universities and colleges. And what do they have in these universities and colleges? They have inclusion. Again, marketing, taking advantage of this latent fear that we all have to not fit in and not be trendy, not be liked by our peers, and God forbid we become the dunce that's sitting in the back of the class in the corner. So everyone's included. Doesn't that sound great? That's inclusion. Unless you have other ideas than the majority. In other words, democracy, you know, because that's what this is all about, right? Democracy. They don't care about the individual rights. They don't care about the individual who's sitting with a hat being ridiculed, sitting with a hat on their head in the back of the class in a corner being ridiculed. That's the person that's supposed to be protected in a constitutional republic. But that's the person that wants to be shamed out of ever believing in something like that. Because everyone wants to agree that democracy is the best way. So while you all go around and think that you want to be in a democracy, by the way, a democracy is also known as a lynch mob. In other words, there's no justice, there's nothing. There's what the group at the time decides. AKA lynch mob. That is the essence of what democracy is. And that's also why our founders had the wisdom to provide us with a constitutional republic, so that when crowds of people get out of hand, justice isn't taken in to the wrong hands impetuously, without thought, reactionarily, and dangerously. Rather, the rule of law applies. Calmer heads. Calmer, cooler, wiser heads prevail. And that we get to the bottom of whatever crime there might or may not be, and we investigate it. But the problem with the democracy is there never is. See, with the democracy, they just do whatever the mass says. There's no thought process at all. Oh, sure, you could argue that in the beginning that they all agree that they have certain terms and certain things. And, you know, and I guess to a small extent you could say that that would be effective. But in all reality, large groups of people are very dangerous. And that's just a fact. And if you talk to any of these nitwits that think that they want democracy, think they want communism, think they want socialism, talk to them. Please do. Please, please, please do. You'll find out when you talk to them that each one of them, each one of these social justice warriors, has their own idea about what's important. They have their own agendas. And each and every one of them believe that their ideas are the ones that are going to get the majority vote. And my, oh my, aren't they surprised when communism rolls in that none of their ideas are going to be listened to, and none of their ideas are going to come to fruition, and they're all lined up against the wall and shot in the head. Because socialism is a trick. Democracy is a trick. Democracy leads to socialism, which brings in communism. And it's never worked, not once. And expecting it or thinking that you could do it differently this time is the epitome of stupidity. It's ridiculous. Democracy was designed to bring in socialism, and socialism was designed to bring in communism. It's time to grow up and realize that. And so I'll leave you with this. Certainly because our children are our future. Start parenting your children before they parent you.